Hello there, good people. Patricia here. So, guess what? We are have been moving around today. So, if I'm going to get this done, then it's got to be done from the car, and we'll get caught back up in our usual space here for the next day. But I want to talk about how important it is to make sure that we are sharing our not just our knowledge, but our wisdom with those who are following behind us, because it is so very, very important. Before we dive into that, I want to ask you to please remember to hit the thumbs up and the like button so that this can get pushed out to others who are looking for conversations like this. So here's the thing. I get asked to do a lot of speaking, not as much speaking as I used to down through the years, but I get asked to do a lot of speaking, especially to young professionals. And the reason why this is so important to me, number one, is because there are things that I really, really wish that someone had talked to me about back when I was that age, and in a very honest way, right? Not in this way where you're just trying to talk around stuff and oh yes, we'll just keep working and all this. The reality is that young people, and some grown people, older people as well, really need to hear the truth from people, and not in a woe is me kind of way, but in a practical experience kind of way that also shows some vulnerability and the wisdom that was gained from those experiences. And so when I get asked to speak to groups, especially young professional groups, I try to make sure and share from that perspective, because I was a young professional who was very engaged, very ambitious, and always going for the next thing, and really could have utilized somebody speaking a little more openly and a little more truthfully about the situations that they were facing, and not just the situations that they were facing, but how they overcame them. And that is the piece of information that is so extremely valuable. And so I always encourage folks to do that. I kind of practice what I preach, is whatever that saying goes, and to encourage folks to do it, so that literally becomes a part of my legacy, so that folks that I spoke to 10, 15, 20 years ago, they're doing that now. And that makes my heart happy to be able to hear them say that, and to encourage folks. And so not just that, but also still hosting conversations with young people one-on-one. And if someone reaches out to me, I will do that. I will not generally even run them through my usual process, because if they are a young person, particularly just coming out of school or just starting in their career, and they have made the effort to actually reach out to me, then I'm going to give them extra time. And I actually used to challenge the folks who I worked, or when I would go speak to groups, I'd challenge them, and I would tell them, I'm like, hey, I'm extending this invitation to you, and I am telling you now, only a handful of you may actually follow up on it. And I never was wrong. I mean, it was always true that there would be 2 or 3, maybe tops, who would reach out, who would actually use either my email, or dare I say, I'd even give my cell phone number out sometimes, and they wouldn't reach out. But the ones who did, well, guess what? They took the initiative, they took the leap of faith, and I'm going to give them my time. And those are also the ones that end up staying connected down through the years. I've seen it happen over and over again. And so it's a couple of different things. It's not even about looking for mentors or whatever. Some folks will say that, and they'll always be talking about, I need a good mentor or whatever. That's a relationship that can be developed over time for sure. But sometimes it's just about having a solid connection, someone that you can reach out to, who will speak to you truthfully, that you can say, hey, if you call, I will be glad to answer any questions. or, take you to lunch or coffee and we can talk a little bit more in depth. And then if a mentorship relationship develops from that, so be it. But if not, guess what? There's still impact that is made. There's still something that's learned from that experience. And I just love to make sure that that is happening. And I encourage that all around. Now, here's the thing. If it is to develop into a mentor-mentee relationship, then there are responsibilities on both sides of that coin that the two people involved will need to honor. As the mentor, there are responsibilities, and as the mentee, there are responsibilities that aren't just about, are you, following up, but it's also about making sure that you take the effort to reach out and to follow up on the advice that you're given. Because the truth is, if someone who's got so many years behind them, if you're off and they're taking that time out of their schedule to share insights with you, then, perhaps you should kind of listen to them. And actually follow up on a few things. So I will say that for sure. The other thing is that, and I will also say, I have tons of conversations about mentor-mentee relationships that are in my Coffee Time career chat. And I will provide a link to that in the description. So I'm not going to go into depth on that, but because I really want to keep this much more high level and reminding folks of there's just value in sharing not just what you know, but what you've experienced, right? The value comes from the experiences that people don't give the details on. They normally talk about the stuff that happened. And of course, we're back because we had to have a little accident. This is what happens when you do something different, but I'm going to push through. But so what I was saying is, most of the time, people are not being honest in sharing their stories. They're washing over the details, right? And getting to the good part of and this is how I overcome in the whatever. But sometimes people really need to see and hear the down and dirty part of it, dare I say, and the part where this had me in tears and here's how I got to this point, because so often people are not being honest about all the things that are going on. And so it's important to make sure that you can share that in a way that's authentic, of course, right? But also shows some vulnerability that people don't do. People are not used to getting that level of depth from someone, and it may take them off course for a second, but I know that it works and that it's effective because they circle back around. The young folks, the people who are listening, they always circle back around, and you know that you are being heard. So it's not about having this huge widespread impact immediately, because you don't always know when that's going to be, but for the long term, absolutely. And so I encourage you to make sure to be that person if you can. And if you're not the person, if you're on the receiving end, then hey, guess what? Circle back around and let somebody know when when they've had an impact on you, because sometimes we need that, right? And it encourages us to continue in doing that and to reach out even more. I've been doing this so long that I, most of the time, don't question whether I should continue doing it, because I do know the impact is long serving. And so I don't normally, worry about that so much anymore. Now, sometimes when I'm doing it in a group setting and there are some other expectations of folks, that may affect how I show up for, let's say, that group again, if I do. But if not, if somebody individual shows up for me and comes to me and approaches me from that group and reaches out, I'm always gonna follow back up. I just do. If I don't, and you're listening, you're like, well, she didn't follow back up with me. Well, either I missed the email or the DM or something happened, because I normally follow up with virtually anyone who reaches out to me, unless I think it's spam. If I think it's spam, I'm not. I'm just going to be honest. I'm not. But I'm also very specific about how I tell people to reach out to me, especially if we met in a group setting. And I will say, hey, reach out to me this way, and tell me that where we met and all of that, so that I know who you are and where you came from. And then I will always respond to you. But I just want to encourage you to remember that if you have years of experience behind you as a professional person, as a, just being human with those who are coming up behind you is such a valuable take. And it has longevity to it that you just don't even know right now. And so I want to encourage you to continue to doing that. Or if you haven't, to start, because there's always someone who's going to really appreciate that value that you bring. And, you start that legacy building right then and there when you have that first person who comes back and says, you know what, I heard you speak, or you shared this story and it really impacted my life in a significant way. So, those are the thoughts I just wanted to toss out there, because of course, it's always instigated for me by having a conversation with someone that reminds me of the value of it, and to remind me to keep doing it. Right? Literally. Because sometimes we need the supporters, whatever, we need a little, what's the word? Not just support, but a little motivation. That's the word I'm looking for. A little motivation as well to continue to reach out and provide some leadership and conversation to those who need it most. All right. Okay. That's it for this odd little session, but I wanted to get it out there. We will make sure that, it's all edited out. It doesn't look real crazy. It may be a little bit shorter, but I'm honoring my commitment to stay on track with our videos. And be sure, if you haven't already, to hit the like button, to subscribe and connect, and let me know what your thoughts are on this issue. I'd love to hear from you in the comments, or hit me up in the DMs. Okay, have a great day.